Hello everyone, welcome back to Smile Through It All. Thank you everyone for an incredible response on the previous blog. We're really grateful for all the comments, the number of questions that we got. We were really surprised. People pinged me on WhatsApp, Instagram, on the YouTube videos, and even sent out emails. Really an overwhelming response. Thank you so much. A lot of you have also been there just for us and mentioned that you would like to support us. So we are really grateful for that. And like we mentioned again, we are basically making these videos for awareness. And the reason why we started our channel was also the same. Today we thought we would make a part 2 of the video. Last time we focused on the sickness itself, but this time we would like to talk about the stem cell journey, the things around it, and I hope you like this video. Yeah? You want to say something before we start?
Yeah, this was an overwhelming response. We were pretty happy that we are able to generate some sort of awareness about this entire process that we went through, and people also got back to us, some people who are currently undergoing treatment for leukemia around Germany, and we are trying to help them as much as possible. I mean, this is why this was our aim to do these videos, right? To support people who are a little more in their shell, who are a little hesitant to come out and express what they're going through and ask for help. And we in the future plan to also involve other organizations that we know to set up a more seamless process of how people can reach out and seek help. Not just for this type of ailment, but also for any other help for expats who are living in Germany. But then that will come separately later. But yeah, again, thank you so much for all the support. And we can probably continue with the second leg of our recovery journey, let's say.
So maybe we start with the process of the stem cell. So when did you know that you would need a stem cell transplant? I think we've summarized that in the previous video, but maybe for the ones who are watching this for the first time, we could just bring that up.
Yeah. So after I recovered from the chemotherapy sessions that I had initially, I was doing okay. Everything was fine. And 4 months after my final chemo session, when they were doing some routine checks, they found out that there is a possibility that the cancer might be coming back. It wasn't really hardcore proof, but then there are some extensive tests that are only carried out in certain hospitals, Heidelberg University being one of them. And that is when they said it is now time to already start the other form of treatment, which is stem cell transplant. But stem cell transplant is not as straightforward as getting chemotherapy. It's not just a drug. It's basically a new immune system being injected into me and replacing my current immune system. So for this, we had to do a lot of things. One of them, at least to start off with, we had to search in the global registry to see if there is already a matching donor available for me. So a global registry is
a platform,
a form of basically a database which is maintained by, it could be country-wise, it could be organization-wise, it could even be locally in a hospital. They are maintaining their own registry. But then a global one is where people who have registered as stem cell donors, all of their information is available in one database. And one of the organizations which is leading in collecting these information and processing them is called DKMS. So it's Deutsche Knochenmarkspender-Datei. We will also put in the links in the bio for more description. So this organization is a German organization, but it's available worldwide, I think. It's also available in India. And these guys basically maintain these databases, and that is where they also looked if there is already a donor available for me. How they do these checks is by something called HLA typing. match, where it's basically, to put it across simply, it's basically a genetic match to see if my genetic type and the a person who is registered in the database, our genetic types match. And how much do they match by how, if it is 90% or
9 out of 10
plus
match. Yeah.
or a 9 out of 10 match, then it is considered a pretty good match. 100% match
Is
means
1 to 4 in the world. Yeah, that's
so I will have 4 other people who match my genetic coding by 100%. And this is obviously extremely rare to find, unless I would have had a twin, probably.
genetic twin anywhere in the world.
Then it would have been different. But anyways, so in this, they could not initially find anyone who was matching my genetic coding. So in the meanwhile, they said, we do not want you to go through intense chemotherapy. So what we will do is we can prolong the process of the cancer cells itself coming back by starting off with oral chemotherapy. And these were basically tablets that I was consuming, along with some injections that were being administered once a month.
Yeah, you got the venetoclax, right? Here.
Yes, I got the venetoclax. Vital venetoclax was the complete drug. So it was a combination of injections and oral medication. So it was on a monthly cycle, let's say. And this basically suppressed the growth or the advancement of the cancer itself. And this is of course a temporary treatment until we could find a donor for me. What happened next was, at some point, I think after 3 to 4 months, we did find a donor who had, I think, newly registered in the portal, who was now available, who was also from India. But we do not know any more information about it because this is a strictly anonymous transaction, let's say, because there is a high possibility that the receiver can coax the donor into giving their stem cells by hook or crook, let's say by using force or by giving them some money or things like that. So they always take precautions to anonymize the donor, which was also the same in my case. Unfortunately, 1 week before I was supposed to receive the donor stem cells, the donor backed out. We don't really know what happened. I think it may be just that the person got cold feet and didn't want to continue with it.
This is very common with a lot of, especially from the Asian region. And just to add in here, until this point or the first 2 months, we kind of, let it to the hospital because they mentioned that anywhere the donor is always on the global registry. So they were doing most of it. And towards the end, or when this donor backed out, in our case, is when things got really serious.
After the donor backed out, what happened was we were left in the dark, and this is when another organization stepped into the scene, let's say. But maybe Spurti can explain better about it, since I was not really involved in this process.
Yeah, so when I heard that the donor backed out, this was around Jan, I was totally shattered and I didn't know what to do. So I kind of went back to the hospital and kind of, was irritating my doctor, like, how could this happen? And why did the donor back out? And he also mentioned that once that we were lucky, or this is how the usual process is, that his body is not yet prepared for the transplant. So they knew that they had the history that a lot of Asians also back out. Although things are changing over the years, a lot of them are donating, a lot of them still have cold feet towards the end and they back out. The process on the donor side is pretty simple and straightforward, but still without any health complication. But a lot of donors, are not aware of this. And even if they're given all the knowledge about it, their family sometimes does not let them do that. And in our case, this happened and I didn't know what to do about the next step. So I kind of had this cold war with the guys at the stem cell unit at the hospital and said, why don't you let us do the campaign? Let us find the donor. And that's when they told us, yeah, go ahead. Do let us know if there's somebody in the family that's matching, whether he has siblings who match or anybody in the immediate family. Please send us their HLA reports. And you can also get in touch with organizations yourself. But one thing is for sure, you should not, we do not want you to get involved with who the donor is, and everything has to happen through us, which we were, of course, okay. We did not want to have any information on the donor themselves. All we wanted was Aniket's health to be okay. And the first thing that I did is I heard about DKMS online in my research. I approached them because in Germany they're very popular, and also heard that they're popular in India, and the probability of Aniket's match being from India is slightly high because, of course, most of his family through generations has been there. So that was what I was expecting. And they tried to help us with campaigns. And during this time, I work at SAP and as well as Aniket. And I wrote out an email to Indians in Germany, Indians at SAP and so on, mentioning that, there are these donor organizations like DKMS where everybody can register and donate their stem cells. There's little to no, health issues with respect to the same. I'm not looking for saving Aniket's life only. I'm just interested in doing the same to anybody who has blood disorders, whether it is leukemia or anything like that. I was not aware of it before, that giving my stem cells could lead to somebody's life and health and well-being. So I was just trying to promote that, and Ashwin from SAP got in touch with me. I would like to talk about Ashwin and DIFK and all the support that we received from him in a separate video, as well as the support from the other donor organizations, because the video would become too long. But I just want to summarize that he got in touch with me, and he said he will help me with the campaign, not just for Aniket, but also globally. And we got in touch with DKMS. They supported us. A lot of Indians in Germany got, donated their were ready to donate the stem cells. So we didn't have to do it immediately. Only if there was a match, they got their. It was just a cheek swab that was sent to everybody. And through DKMS, we did that, and we still did have little to no luck. I think 8,000 plus people signed up to donate their cells in your case. It was not working out. And then just when I was promoting this on social media, my cousin happened to mention Sim, who is in the US, who was also doing these campaigns in America. And he put me in touch with Datri in India. So he mentioned that Datri is an organization similar to DKMS, but they have a majority in India. And that's when I got in touch with this wonderful lady called Gayatri from India. And I also got to know that the previous donor who had backed out was also part of the registry, and they had made a very good, database. But they also made an attempt when he backed out. They went to him, tried to explain the whole process, tried to save Aniket's life. But something did not work out. But she was there for us through the process. So I will talk about how she helped us again in another video. But we did find out a lot about the organization, and she was there throughout the process. And they helped us collect samples within the family as well. So getting there, the end result of it, the involvement of Datri was, we found out that Aniket's cousin, Aruna auntie, who will be also joining us in one of the videos, and she'll be talking about her experience. But she was a haplo identical match for Aniket, which is not 100% or a 90% match. It is a 50% match, which I think is better in the long run. At least that's what we've been told. But the side effects of a haplo identical match is a little intense to the patient directly during the stem cell transplant. But we had no other choice but to go for it, right? Yeah. Do you want to say something about the haplo identical match and finding out that Aruna auntie was your donor and things like that here?
Yeah. It actually came as a surprise to us because we were just doing this mechanical process of reaching out to everyone that we know, reaching out to my cousins, reaching out to my relatives, reaching out to friends, and just asking them to please register, be part of the registry for me and for all the others who are in need of it. And we kept sending the results of the HLA typing to the doctors here. And one day we just went in and we were talking to the doctors here, and they said, yeah, it's sad that the person who had matched with you backed out, and now we have to postpone the stem cell process by a little. But it's also nice that we now have a new donor. And me and Spurti were in shock at we pretty much froze at this point when they said that, yeah, look, this person here, my cousin, her name is Dr. Aruna Bhavane, but she's more like my aunt, let's say, because of the age gap that we have. And they read out her name and said, she's your relative, and she is a 50% match, which is perfect for us to go ahead with the stem cell transplantation. And this is when we first went into shock, and then we were overjoyed, and we called her immediately, called our family and told them that it's finally going to work out. We got both bad and good news almost around the same time. And then we also reached out to my aunt and asked her again if she was willing to go through the process, and she was more than happy to do it. It was a pretty emotional moment. We will probably talk about it again in the video with her. But yeah, after this, the process got a little more smoother, let's say. But then it was still a huge challenge for everyone involved, because now we were dealing with intercontinental transportation of stem cells, which is also not very common between Germany and a country in Asia. So then again, Datri was always there for us. There was communication being done between Datri and the stem cell unit here in Heidelberg and us. Since we now knew who the donor was, it wasn't a secret anymore, so we could be actively involved in a few things at least. And yeah, it was decided at some point that so the two options of the treatment were either my aunt comes here to Germany, donates the stem cells, and then goes back, and then I get them, or she donates them in India, and the stem cells are then transported by air to Germany, and then I get them at some point. So there were some discussions.
It got crazy even at one point with this, even with the donor accepting, the hospital doing everything. They told us at one point it's not working with the the bureaucracy between two nations. The documentations are entirely different. We don't have a set procedure that both of us agree on, so this would not work. And that's when a lot of organizations came to us. They tried to help us, tried to get things in place, because now we had a donor, and for me that was no backing out. Then we had to make the documentation work between two countries. Datri went above and beyond their usual regulations to make this work for us, and finally things worked, and auntie's stem cells were taken there. She was prepared for it for days together, and the stem cells were carried from India to Germany. And Aniket had to be prepared for it as well, similar to the process that auntie was going through there. Aniket went through intense radiations.
So I wouldn't say similar to the process that...
very different, but yeah, I just meant both of you all were preparing for it.
So there was some conditioning done. So the donor also has to go through some conditioning where, based on the height and weight of the receiver, they calculate how many stem cells needs to be harvested from the donor. And based on that, they are given some injections, which, I mean, the process itself is painless, let's say, the production of the stem cells, but it's just that the vitals of the person may vary a little. By vitals, I mean iron may go down, or some other minerals in your body might vary. But the doctors always do a blood test and make sure that you're getting enough supplements. So it's absolutely no danger to
the donor.
to the donor itself. And we were always told throughout the process that the donor's health is always of highest priority.
Yeah.
Because the last thing we want is to make a healthy person sick. So that is always good, and it's always good for the donor that they don't have to worry about themselves being sick for whatever reason, because the doctors make sure that nothing goes wrong with them. So there was some conditioning done to make sure that she has enough stem cells in her body that they could harvest, and then they could harvest enough, thankfully, that she could give everything, they could take everything in one session, and she did not need one more. And there was a person from Germany, from the organization here, who was sitting there. And once the stem cells were ready, he immediately went to the airport. There was already, I think, more than one seat reservations on different flights done to make sure that there is no gap in between based on how the donation process goes. So they were, I think, 10 steps ahead because of the amount of experience that they have had during in this process. They covered all their bases, and it was basically a seamless process at the end. In the meanwhile, I was admitted, I think, 3 days before the stem cell transplant itself.
So they make sure that that you don't receive the radiations until the stem cells are collected.
Correct.
Because the moment his body is cleaned up or made, ready for the transplant, then there is no backing out, right? So if he doesn't get the stem cells, then he will not survive. So they only started this process once they knew the stem cells were with them, and it is sufficient for him to to go through the process.
Yeah. So once the stem cells reached Germany, they were immediately frozen, and they also made another HLA typing just to make sure that I am getting the right ones, and there was no mistake when it was done the first time. And they also checked the stem cells to make sure that they are in a healthy state. So once all this was confirmed is when I got my dates, and 3 days, so I was admitted, and for the first 3 days, I had 6 sessions of radiation therapy, where the whole goal of this was to destroy or to get rid of my current immune system. After that, I was isolated, and the next day of that, I was given also some chemotherapy, which ran for about 2 hours, I think. So the whole idea of this was to make sure that there is not even a single cell related to my current immune system that I've had for my whole life exists in my body anymore before the new stem cells are transplanted into me. The transplant itself was, how can I say, a very smooth and easy process. It was very anticlimactic, because it's basically a life-saving thing that's being injected into you, and it was just done through IV, and it was just like any other drug being given to me. It wasn't anything special. But then
we had our entire families
on
praying
call,
and on call, but he was smiling, getting it. There was a bunch of doctors in the room who were constantly monitoring and looking at him so that he's all okay. And we were glad that it was a seamless process.
Sometimes I was told that this could also, I could have some sort of side effects while it is being injected into me. But thankfully, I got lucky. The only side effect I had was I had a garlicky taste in my throat. And this, they said, was also very common, one common side effect, or probably that could be true. So this till here, everything was all fine and dandy. I did not have any side effects, but the side effects of the chemo and the radiation started just 1 day after the stem cell transplant, That's
So
when
they call it T-0.
yeah. So this is when the stem cells have to take effect slowly but steadily, because my body does not have a choice anymore. I don't have any the old immune system anymore, and the new immune system has to take over now. But during this transition phase, I do not have any white blood cells in my body. This means that even if I catch the smallest infection, my body cannot handle it. Even if it is a small cold, or I don't know, the smallest infection in the world, my body cannot handle it anymore. So I was isolated. My food was regulated. I could not have any visitors during this period. Yeah. And that's when the side effects started kicking in. I can't even call them side effects because they were so intense. Yeah, maybe Spurti can explain it better, because for me, it's basically right now a blur of what happened during that period. I even spoke to my doctor after I recovered and I came out of the hospital, when he said, when he once asked me during an encounter if I remember taking a particular drug. I first said no, I did not take this drug ever. And then he went through my history and then told me that, yes, you have taken this twice already when you were admitted. I said, no, I have no memory of it. I cannot recall it. And that's when he mentioned that this is something your brain does when you go through something traumatic as this, that it erases all the bad experiences and basically turns the entire journey into a blur. And you only remember snippets of the entire process. But Spurti, on the other hand, was witnessing this live, not going through the pain herself, but then it was as good as it, because she was watching me suffer there. So maybe she can explain it better.
Yeah, I think the first few days after the transplant, right, it was all about praying that the cells start coming up, right? For some of them, it takes 5 days or 8 days, and some of them it takes 40 or 50 days. And if it does not come up, it means that the transplant did not work. So every single day, it was all about praying that things have worked. And they even told us there was, like, with haplo transplants, it's about 40 to 50% that it may not work, and that is really scary. So the first few days, every day was all about prayer, and then I think it got up on the 20th day. If I'm wrong, we were expecting it around the 8th, and that's when we were also just starting to lose hope on the whole thing. But then after day 20, it started coming up. That's when also things started getting, like, crazy with him. If in the world I'm scared of one thing, it's snakes. And it ended up that I was about to meet him, and then I saw that his whole body, the skin had turned into the snake skin, and it was extremely scary for me. He had bloated up, the skin had become I couldn't touch it, but then I had to get the courage. I was almost like a nurse there. There's a lot of support that he got, but then it's not the same as family being there and doing things for him. And I was there to change his clothes and take him for some regular things like massages. And I used to close my eyes and give him the massage, and it just didn't feel like him at that point. But then we had to take the courage. There were parts of his body which had blisters, like including his tongue, his hands, armpits. Any sweat gland, was just turning into like an abrasive, swollen red. So we had to every day apply like intense creams, which also used to burn for you. At that point, there was again severe hair loss because of all the radiations. The most of the effect was outside the hair, the skin. You could not eat anything, whether it was fruits or even basic pudding. And it was extremely scary for me at that point. What to feed him. He needs energy. IV can only do a certain so much, right? So forcefully feed him some purees and get his body moving, right? Because of the IV, his body used to bloat because of the water retention in his feet. He had swollen nerves. He could not walk.
Yeah, the list keeps going.
The list was endless.
So basically, during this process, on one side, the white blood cells and the immunity are slowly coming up. They're slowly growing, let's say, from scratch. But on the other side, my body is prone to infections. And there was a steady stream of antibiotics, steady stream of steroids. The new immune system also needs to be subdued, let's say, or suppressed a little, so that the body and this immune system have some time to, let's say, get to know each other and be in harmony. For this to happen, the immune system was always suppressed. It was suppressed so that only part of it could really start taking over and doing what it is supposed to do eventually. But not completely exposed. Otherwise, they could easily go start attacking organs in my body, and this would lead to catastrophic results. But the side effect of this suppression was I did not have an immune system anymore, even though I had one. And that is why I had tons of infection, which...
Yeah, name it, and he had it. I mean, I'd never heard of those things before.
Yeah.
Every other day, the new infections, new symptoms, everything had to be handled one by one. Or his tablet box is like every day used to be about 30 to 40 tablets. It was crazy. I can also share a picture of the tablet box that I had once upon a time for him. Seeing that was also crazy for me. But over time, he overcame all those infections. But there was one major thing called graft versus host disease, which is extremely common with stem cell transplants. They say that a small amount of GVHD is actually good, but it means that the graft versus graft and the host are fighting with each other with respect to the immune system, and things are progressing, and they need to handle this. But at a certain stage, the GVHD got intense. Do you want to say something about it?
This was at a much later stage, let's say. But when after the stem cell transplant itself, when I was admitted, by the end of it, the good news was that my immune system was growing as it was supposed to. Maybe I think it took a few more days than was expected or as per statistics, but it still did do what it was supposed to do, and that was the best news that we heard.
It was also because of his age that he received everything in terms of extremes, right? The radiations and everything around it. So the side effects that was coming also with respect to all of these were delayed because of all of these, because the 4th-degree radiations is normally not given to leukemia patients. Most of the patients are usually very young or very old. So he was in this right age where they thought he can handle it, and that's why he received the extreme case of radiations, the highest possible 4th degree. And that is why he had to also face all of these. But coming to the GVHD later.
So GVHD again came later. So in between, I was released from the hospital that I could come home because I was doing well. But in the meanwhile, I had lost about 25 to 30 kilos. I wish I could share the picture with you, but it's actually a little too graphic for me to share. I'm not comfortable sharing it. But at some point, my skin had turned pitch black, and I was only skin and bones. Spurti literally wheeled me out to the car and then almost carried me home. I was about 59. No, how much was I?
You were less than 60 kilos?
No, I was about 60 kilos, I think. 65 kilos, I think, when I came home during that point. But then after that, for the next couple of months, or let's say about 3 months, things were looking really well. I picked up well. I could start doing small activities at home, I think. I could move around. I was slowly starting to be independent, which was really nice, which felt good to have this second life. But I think after about 4 or 5 months, the GVHD that Spurti mentioned started kicking in. This is when the new immune system, the immunosuppressant tablets that I was taking, they slowly started reducing them and letting the new immune system, exposing it, let's say, to my body. And this is when a very common form of GVHD got hold of me. This was the gut, to do with the gut, and basically the immune system started attacking my gut, and what this meant was loss of appetite, constant diarrhea, and
Bleeding as well.
and at some point in the advanced stages there was also some bleeding. This is when we started panicking a little bit, because
some of the doctors didn't have a lot of hope at this point.
It was about which immunosuppressants will help control this GVHD, to keep it under control, so that my gut can heal itself. Because if they let this happen further, what could happen was the immune system could really attack the gut in such a way that there would be holes in my gut, which would leak all its contents into the blood, which would lead to constant infections. And I would basically be hospitalized indefinitely, because I would always be prone to infections. So at this point, they were contemplating of changing my immune system medication and finding out the right one that will handle this situation better. What was told to me at this point was there are a few options that they will try, that they can try, that they expect it to work. But if they run out of all of these options and they do not have any more things to try, then there's not much they can do. Then they only
that was what I meant, yeah.
treat the symptoms, and they cannot really treat the cause anymore. At this point, I was actually more scared than the transplant itself, because till now I wasn't really actively trying to do any research about my treatment and looking at the negative side of it. But this is when I had to directly speak to the doctors and take some decisions on my own as well, about which drugs would work and which would not. But thankfully, after a lot of suffering, it was a pretty traumatic time as well. After all this, they switched to another immunosuppressant medication, which started acting in like 3 days since from the time I started taking it. And I could already see some improvement. And I think 1 week after that, I was released from the hospital and I could come home.
I've heard a lot about this popular drug called Jakavi, also on a lot of stem cell groups, in terms of, acting as and especially in cases of GVHD, it turned out to be really good for you compared to the other.
It was a combination of more than one immunosuppressant. It was Graft and Jakavi, which did the trick. But you never know. Every body reacts differently. Every drug acts differently. And it's basically a trial and error, even for the doctors. No matter how much research you do into this, you never know what the body needs, right, to recover. And this was probably the biggest hurdle that we passed through after the stem cell transplant itself. Since then, there have been a lot of ups and downs, including just recently we recovered from a major infection. But to do with the stem cell, to do with, let's say, side effects of the treatment that I got, as expected, the flares have been lesser and milder. I don't want to go into each and every incident that I had, because it's a long list. But since then, I have had to get admitted about 2 more times, I think, after that. But these were pretty short stints of 1 week to 10 days. And these were not life-threatening infections. They just had to treat it because I was pretty weak and my blood count wasn't up to the mark. So they did everything they could. And once I was okay, I was asked to go home and continue with the medication.
Yeah, and we're here close to 2 years. And in the stem cell area, or the DKMS or donor areas, that is when the donor usually meets the patient.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good mark that we're here. And that's why we also decided to make a video around this time, that we're going to reach the 2-year mark. We celebrated the first, and I hope his health remains as stable as it gets. And I hope a lot of y'all watching this video also get a lot of courage that, if we could do it, I'm sure you can too. So it's more about the willpower, and leave the rest to the doctors or to God, I would say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
I think this is already a pretty long video. Should we make the questions as the next part?
I would say so.
Yeah.
We can make a separate
Yeah,
video on the questions.
we can post it back to back, but we would just split it into another video.
I also think we answered a few questions
Already
when we spoke about the complete journey, but then we can definitely make another video very soon and just cater to all the questions, especially to do with how the insurances, what role the insurance, health insurance in Germany at least plays, and how to utilize the resources that are available.
Correct. Nothing is straightforward until you ask for it here.
Yeah.
And we've been through our share of ups and downs around this process as well. So would be happy to share all of it, as well as, of course, an interview with our donor, the organizations who helped us. That would be
That's
the next.
also upcoming.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, then thank you so much for listening. Like, share, and subscribe. Bye-bye.